Welcome back. Welcome to the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mailer, LCSW, licensed clinical therapist and performance coach. This is episode 38. Most people think motivation is something you either wake up with or you don't. That great performers stay fired up, driven, and locked in all the time. But that's not the full picture. The truth is, motivation isn't a feeling you wait for, it's a state you create. The more you rely on motivation to magically show up, the more inconsistent your performance becomes. For high achievers, waiting for motivation is one of the fastest ways to stall your progress. Motivation fades in countless subtle ways. When you avoid the tasks that matter because they feel overwhelming, when you chase quick wins instead of meaningful work, or when you tell yourself you'll start tomorrow because today doesn't feel right. It can even hide inside productivity. Filling your schedule with busy work that feels good in the moment but doesn't move the needle. Real motivation doesn't come from hype. It comes from clarity, discipline, and knowing how to generate momentum even when you don't feel inspired. Today we're breaking down the psychology of motivation, why it drops, how high performers can rebuild it on command, and how to create systems that keep you moving even on your lowest energy days. You'll learn how to work with your brain instead of against it, how to build sustainable momentum, and how to turn your motivation from something you chase into something you consistently cultivate. Quick note before we dive in, this podcast is for education and performance growth. It's not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment. If there is something you need, make sure you go and get it. This is about spreading awareness and spreading education. It's not about replacing treatment. You can watch full episodes of the podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and we also have the audio-only version on Apple Podcasts as well, if that is how you want to check it out. I'll be sharing clips across Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and X, so hit subscribe or follow to catch every drop of new content as it comes out, and all the links to the social media accounts are in the show notes, so jump in there, get involved with those communities as we continue to grow them. If you've ever felt like you want more drive, more consistency, more push, but you keep falling into the same motivational dips, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. What is motivation? Motivation is the psychological force that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behavior. It is the desire or reason that compels an individual to act, whether to fulfill basic needs, pursue personal growth, or achieve specific objectives. The neuroscience of motivation drop-offs. Now we're going to go into the brain a little bit about it. Motivation drop-offs are linked to complex changes in the brain's reward system circuitry, primarily involving the neurotransmitter dopamine and the key brain regions like the ventral striatum and the prefrontal cortex. Dopamine is central to motivation, drive, and the anticipation of reward. The brain maintains a baseline level of dopamine, which is called tonic release. Initial motivation for a new or rewarding task causes a significant peak, which is a phasic release. Over time, if this initial high is not sustained through new challenges or intermittent rewards, the baseline can drop, leading to a noticeable decrease in drive. Dopamine helps the brain determine if a potential reward is worth the required effort, which is why if something feels too big or impossible to accomplish, your body's not going to motivate you to go do it because it feels like that reward is not worth the effort. When dopamine signaling is insufficient or dysregulated, tasks requiring significant effort seem less appealing, leading to avoidance or an unwillingness to pursue the goal. Dopamine neurons fire strongly when a reward is unexpected. As the reward becomes routine and predictable, the dopamine response wanes, which can diminish motivation unless new elements of novelty or challenge are introduced. This may be something you've noticed just, say, working out on your own. That if you get into a good routine, at first it feels good, at first you feel the results and see the results of it. But the more you keep doing it, the more you see that it starts kind of plateauing and you don't get much more from it, which is why we need to change things up and do different things as often as we can because it's going to keep these things fresh. The brain regions that process reward, value, and decision-making become less active or functionally disconnected during motivational decline. The ventral striatum, including the nucleus accumbens, this area is critical for anticipation and the pursuit of rewards. This is the go signal. Reduced activity or volume in the ventral striatum is consistently correlated with lower motivation and anhedonia, which is the inability to feel pleasure. The prefrontal cortex is also involved. The prefrontal cortex is involved in goal-directed behavior, planning, and evaluating costs versus benefits. Dysfunctional connections between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, which is in charge of emotions and reward, can impair a person's ability to maintain focus on long-term delayed rewards, favoring immediate gratification instead. This would be short-term over long-term. And there's a lot of people out there that get really stuck with the short-term of trying to get things that feel good right now. And in a lot of ways, wants are more short-term, while needs are usually more long-term, of trying to build something or trying to create something or trying to reach a point in life. The anterior cingulate cortex is involved in effort-cost computation. Problems here can make an individual less willing to expend the effort needed to achieve goals, contributing to motivation. So this is kind of that cost analysis of, is this worth the effort that I'm going to put into it? And if it feels like it's not, then we don't do the thing. So issues with this aspect can stop us from getting going. And we have some other neurotransmitters that get involved, like serotonin. While dopamine drives the seeking aspect of motivation, an imbalance with serotonin, which is often associated with mood regulation and well-being, can contribute to a general lack of enthusiasm or a depressive state that impacts motivation altogether. Higher levels of inflammatory markers in the body have also been linked to reduced activity in brain reward circuits, further diminishing motivation. So inflammation going on in the body or the brain can cause more and more issues with getting things going, which is more reason to take care of our body. That goes back to our self-care episode. The high performer paradox. The more successful you get, the harder motivation becomes. This is something very common for high performers. The high performer paradox describes how the very traits and systems that lead to initial success can make long-term motivation difficult to maintain. As individuals become more successful, new challenges arise that can undermine their drive, such as the diminishing returns of the brain's reward system, increased pressure, and the transition from skill execution to leadership. In a lot of ways, motivation becomes harder with success due to the neuroscience of diminishing returns that we touched on. The brain's dopamine system responds strongly to unexpected rewards and novelty, or new things. When success becomes routine and predictable, the dopamine hit associated with the achievement decreases, leading to a feeling that success is less meaningful or exciting, called success fatigue. This is something that's big to be aware of, because we got to keep in mind that our body, our system is set up to get us to do new things, because doing new things is going to help us grow. It's going to help us change. That's the power of the dopamine release. When we get into routines, when we do things consistently, that's good. We want to do that. But getting into that spot means that dopamine is going to slow back and even calm down on its own, which is why sometimes we need to focus on other things outside of motivation, because if we just focus on motivation alone to do the work, we can get lost. Because the goal of dopamine is to help us do new things, help us grow, help us change. If we get into a good routine, while that's good, that goes away because there's no reason to learn anything new now. We just keep doing it, which is why that dopamine response starts to wane. Once major external goals like salary, title, or recognition are achieved, those needs are met and they no longer serve as strong motivators, as suggested by theories like Maslow's hierarchy. New higher level intrinsic drivers are needed to sustain motivation at that point. Once a high bar is set, high performers face internal and external pressure to consistently overperform. This can shift focus from the intrinsic enjoyment of the work to the extrinsic pressure of maintaining a rank or status, which is less motivating. High performers often succeed due to traits like perfectionism and resilience, but these traits often put them at high risk for stress and emotional exhaustion as well. The workload tends to increase because they are capable, leading to chronic burnout if not managed effectively. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Sometimes we got to understand where we're at and how we're setting our own system up to make sure we can keep doing all of these things. Motivation is often easy when the goal is clear, like get promoted, reach a certain revenue, buy a new house, whatever it might be. But after a big win, individuals may feel lost and lack clarity about what their next meaningful objective should be, causing them to feel directionless or lost. Because in these moments, once we get to that goal, there's nothing else there. And this is the power of enjoying the intrinsicness of what we're doing. because the goal is just doing the thing. So you could keep doing it. If the goal is to reach a goal that's outside of you, a house, a job, a promotion, whatever it is, then once you get there, you're going to get this moment after that celebration of, okay, now what? So we have to keep going. We have to keep growing with things. And that is never going to stop. You're never going to get to a place where everything just feels okay. You're going to get to that place and you think it's all going to be all right. And then it's going to be, okay, now what? And then you're going to keep going. High performers may also feel isolated, assuming others cannot or do not want to understand their unique stresses. They may stop asking for help, leading to a lack of support when they need it most. This happens a lot and it's very common. I've even dealt with it myself because the work that we do as entrepreneurs or high performers puts us in a spot that a lot of other people don't do, that don't operate at. So some people won't understand it. They won't get what you're doing. Other people may. But again, it's going to be unique situations, unique stresses because of our own unique situations. So we need to be able to lean on each other because it is very easy to get isolated and feel like we're all alone doing this all by ourselves. Success can be a very lonely path. So we have to find people to lean on, whether it's mentors or other people doing similar things, and lean on each other to build a support network that's going to keep us going. And that's partly what we're doing here at Premier Performance with our social media accounts, is trying to build communities so you guys can connect with each other and keep building these things up with like-minded individuals. A high performer promoted into a leadership role might struggle to transition from doing the work, which is the execution, to coaching and delegating, which is a completely different game. Their old identity as the fixer can get in the way of developing new, necessary leadership skills, leading to frustration. So you may be great at what you're doing. That might be selling, that might be running a program, that might be leading a room, whatever it might be. But once you get to this point where you have to coach others to do it, or you have to delegate, which is handing off tasks to other people so they take them on and you can't do them all yourselves, that is a whole nother level of the game. And this is where some people really start to crash out. Some people are really great at what they do, but they aren't good at leading others to do the same thing. And I know it doesn't sound right, it sounds counterintuitive, but this is how it works. We have to do the things that we're good at, but we also have to learn the new skills as we keep climbing, because it's going to change. It's less about you doing the thing technically and more about helping others do it, or leaning on others to do it for you and trusting that they have it covered. Now let's talk about why achievement resets your baseline. Achievement resets your motivational baseline due to the brain's dopamine-driven reward system and a process called habituation, ensuring humans are constantly driven to seek new challenges and adapt, because stillness is death. We have to keep going. Anticipation is key. Dopamine is less about the pleasure of consumption. It's not about enjoying the candy or enjoying the cake or whatever it is. It's more about the motivation and desire to pursue a goal. It's going after something. The highest levels of dopamine are released in anticipation of a reward, or when a reward is unexpected, which is known as a reward prediction error. When you achieve a significant goal, there is an initial peak in the dopamine activity, resulting in feelings of happiness and satisfaction. However, the brain quickly adapts to this new level of stimulation. The neural system develops a tolerance, and the dopamine release eventually wanes, often leading to a post-achievement trough, where motivation dips below the previous baseline. This rapid decline in euphoria forces you to look for the next thing. You may have experienced this in your own life, getting a raise or a promotion. At first, it probably felt amazing. You were so happy about it. You were so proud of it. But now, maybe a couple months later, a couple weeks later, maybe a year later, you just look at it like, yeah, that's just normal. That's just what I get paid, or that's just what my job is. Because the excitement of it wears off because we habituate to it. We get more used to it again. And that's why so many people just look to the next things in these moments. As a goal becomes predictable or routine, the brain releases less dopamine for it. A person who achieves success frequently no longer experiences the same intense reward signal for those achievements. The brain essentially says, I expected this, and moves on to finding new, less predictable sources of reward. It just keeps going. We are never stagnant. And we talked a little bit about this, but we're going to go deeper into it, which is why discipline replaces motivation at the top levels. At the highest levels of achievement, discipline replaces motivation because motivation is a fleeting emotion, while discipline is a consistent, reliable system of action and habit. Elite performers understand that writing for inspiration is an unreliable strategy for sustained success. This is something that we have all felt. There's been many times we've wanted to do something that we knew was good for us or we knew we should do, but it's been hard to get ourselves to do it. I mean, there's times with me just recording these podcasts that there's days I don't want to do it, but I hold myself to it through discipline because I know I made this commitment. I know I have to do this. If I just wait for the motivation to show up, maybe half the time I don't even record a podcast episode and I don't stay consistent with what I'm doing. So we have to stick to what we're doing through discipline, through I told myself I'm going to do this, so I'm going to go do this. And sometimes there is no secret shortcut to that of how to make that easier. We just have to be willing to do the hard things we set our minds to sometimes. And you would be surprised at how much more you can get done by pushing towards that and embracing that fear than running away from it. Sometimes you just got to try it out. Motivation is a spark, while on the other hand, discipline is the engine. Motivation is an emotional state that provides the initial burst of energy and excitement to start a new project or goal, getting things going. However, like any emotion, it fluctuates based on mood, stress levels, and external circumstances. Discipline, conversely, is the ability to do what needs to be done regardless of how one feels. It is a conscious choice to act, a mental toughness that overrides temporary discomfort or lack of desire. As high achievers often say, discipline will take you places motivation can't. And that's the truth. So build a disciplined, structured system that works for you and what you're trying to get done. You will be glad you did it. And this is what high performers do. We don't just wait for things to show up in our life. We go get them through hard work and sweat. And you got to remind yourself, if it was easy, everyone would do this. This is why I'm pushing you guys and giving you guys this information so you can do the work. This is what we're doing with the Premier Mindset, is we're building you guys up so you can do the work. And if you want to take it even further, you reach out to us here at Premier Performance and we keep you guys going. Along with that, there's a myth that motivation must feel intense, which isn't true. It is a common myth that motivation must feel always intense, passionate, or energetic to be effective. In reality, motivation often exists as a quiet but persistent sense of purpose or the structured adherence to a disciplined plan. Motivation isn't always the fired up feeling. The popular perception of motivation often comes from inspiring movies or self-help rhetoric that focuses on powerful adrenaline-fueled rush. While that form of motivation exists, it's usually temporary. Sustainable motivation is a much calmer, steadier drive. It's not so volatile. It's not so intense. And I love these movies. I love these shows. I love these types of songs, all that kind of stuff. They fire me up too. I enjoy them. But you can't rely on that being the only thing that works for you. If you really need to get yourself going at times, yeah, give these things a shot. But keep in mind, it's going to be fleeting and you're going to have to convert to that discipline side of things, even if you get started through that fired up motivation. A soft whisper of "I will do this every day" is often more powerful than a single shout of "I must do this now." And this is why it's more powerful. The quiet persistence of discipline ensures progress continues even when enthusiasm wanes. Because if the "I must do this now" shows up once a week, that's great. But if your "I will do this" soft whisper shows up every day, you're going to get so much more done. It will start compounding on each other and start growing in ways that people can't catch up because it'll start moving exponentially. We can't just wait for that burst of energy of "it's time to do this." We have to do the work even when we don't want to. Intense feelings of motivation are often linked to the initial burst of dopamine when a new goal is set. As described in the neuroscience of motivation drop-offs, this feeling is designed to fade as the goal becomes routine. Chasing the initial intense feeling leads to frustration and a belief that motivation is lost when it's simply matured into a quieter state, which is actually what we want. Much of what high performers achieve is done through habit and routine, not intense feeling. The motivation is simply the underlying commitment to the system they have built. They don't feel like doing the work every day, they just do the work. Sometimes we just need to do the work. And it's not about, do I want to, or does this sound nice right now? Sometimes we just have to do it. We have to push ourselves. We have to hold ourselves accountable to the things we decide we're going to do. Going further with motivation, talking now about peak motivation and how it's unrealistic. Often perceived as a constant state of high energy and enthusiasm, peak motivation is an unrealistic expectation due to inherent limits in human neurobiology and psychology. Sustaining such an intense emotional and chemical state is neither possible nor practical for long term success. Our body can't even do it, it's not possible. Which is why we're talking so much about discipline. Because if I tried to tell you guys that you can find that motivation and that fired up emotional side of things, that would be cool, but you literally can't do it. There's no trick out there to make this happen. You'll never be successful. Yeah, you could do some things really good using that. You will not build anything worthwhile because it won't be consistent enough because of this, because our body can't do it. Part of the reasons why is dopamine fatigue. The intense rush associated with peak motivation is linked to high levels of dopamine. The brain's reward system is designed to respond strongly to novelty and unexpected rewards, like we talked about. Once an activity becomes routine or the outcome is predictable, the brain adapts and the dopamine response naturally wanes. It is chemically impossible to maintain that initial high indefinitely because it naturally goes up and then comes back down. The brain is also wired for adaptation. The hedonic treadmill theory suggests that humans quickly return to baseline level of happiness and drive after major events. This adaptation process prevents an individual from getting stuck in one state and encourages continuous seeking and survival behaviors. The brain seeks equilibrium. Sustained peak motivation disrupts this balance, so it gets us back to equilibrium again, back to balance again. And this is needed to keep us alive. Our body is built to be hunter-gatherers. That's what our biology is built around. The life we live nowadays has not been around for very long, and our bodies have not evolved to live in that. So it is wired to live in a way where we had to constantly seek things out. And yes, today it is very easy to just hoard things and have it and then just sit and stay. But your body is still wired to work through going after things. Intense emotional states and focus consume vast amounts of mental and physical energy. The body requires downtime, rest, and recovery periods. Attempting to force a peak state constantly leads quickly to mental exhaustion and physical burnout. Striving for big, intense motivational moments actually destroys consistency because it promotes an all-or-nothing mentality. It makes individuals dependent on fleeting emotional highs and distracts from the power of quiet, persistent habits. This all-or-nothing mentality doesn't work because if you're not feeling it the right way, you're not going to do the work. You either have to feel it or you don't. We have to be able to do the work even when we're not feeling like it, which is why not everyone is able to build things on their own because it's hard to do it. Waiting to feel like it sabotages high performers because it forces them to rely on the unpredictable nature of emotions rather than the reliable structure of discipline and habit. High achievement demands consistent action, which often must occur when motivation is absent. Emotions are unreliable guides. Motivation is an emotion, and all emotions are inherently volatile. They fluctuate based on sleep quality, mood, stress levels, nutrition, and external stressors. High performers understand that relying on a fickle feeling is a fragile foundation for consistent success. Discipline, by contrast, provides a stable, actionable framework that functions irrespective of emotional state, so you can do it no matter how you're feeling. We talked a lot about this in our procrastination episode, which is episode 34, if you want to go back and check that one out in the catalog. We talked a lot about the self-care aspect in that episode too, if you want to go back to that one as well. There's also another myth out there of needing the right mindset before taking action. It is a pervasive myth that you must possess the right mindset or feel perfectly ready before taking action. In reality, action often precedes and generates the necessary mindset, rather than the other way around. This principle is fundamental to consistent high performance. Now let's talk about why action is the catalyst, not the result. The relationship between thought and action is reciprocal. When you take the first step, even hesitantly, you provide your brain with evidence that you are capable of the task. This evidence then starts to shift your internal beliefs and mindset. As the saying goes, fake it till you make it. This works because the action creates the belief. And I know not a lot of people like to fake certain things, but this isn't so much faking it because it's ingenuine. It's faking it because you're trying to build in a habit or a routine that you're not doing yet. So that's the part of faking it. You're faking the routine or the habit, so you start doing it so you can get into the habit or routine so you can make it, so you can start doing it. Another aspect is that momentum creates motivation. Newton's first law of motion applies to human behavior too. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion. The most difficult part is overcoming inertia, getting started. Taking immediate and perfect action generates momentum and often jumpstarts the motivational feelings you were waiting for. This is something I struggled with even with starting this podcast. Before recording the first episode, I was worried that I wasn't at the right level I needed to be knowledge-wise to perform in a way that I wanted to. I was worried that it wasn't going to come off how I wanted it to. And things change as we go. There's a saying out there that published is better than polished. It is better to put things out and get started on it and learn as you go and fix things as you go, because it'll stay perfect in your mind until you put it out there and start trying. But once you start trying, then you can do something about it and improve it and make it even better. And as I've done this, it's come out weekly for like 3/4 of a year at this point. And it's been all good and been going smoothly, and the process has been getting better, and some of the aspects of the product of the actual podcast is getting better and improving as well. I say that hesitantly because, knock on wood, last time I recorded this episode, I actually made a comment about that, and then the audio got totally screwed up. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. We'll take our chances with it. So just get started. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to work on, don't worry about how it might look or what people might think or how it would go or how you're going to fail at it. Just start doing it. You'd be surprised at how many things you can do if you put yourself out there and just start. So let's get started. If you want something, go after it in life. People often wait for clarity or certainty before acting, but clarity is the result of engagement, not the prerequisite. You discover the correct mindset and the next steps by starting the work, making mistakes, and learning from the process, just like we talked about. You have to do the things. You're going to learn along the way, and you're not even going to know what to learn about until you run into those mistakes. Failure is part of the game. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Learn from it. Waiting for the perfect mindset is a common form of procrastination. It provides an excuse for inaction, and it feels like you're being productive at the same time. Committing to action is the first step to bypassing this mental block and ensures progress is made regardless of the internal psychological state. Now let's talk about what to do when your emotional state doesn't match your goals, because this is going to happen. We've talked about how often this can happen. When your emotional state doesn't align with your goals, such as feeling unmotivated while needing to be productive, the strategy is to rely on discipline, behavioral activation, and system building rather than waiting for an emotional shift. So the first step, you want to acknowledge and detach from the feeling. So you want to validate the emotion and acknowledge that you're feeling unmotivated, anxious, or tired, whatever you're feeling, without judgment. And the key here is without judgment. Judgment accelerates emotions. It's going to make it worse. Suppressing emotions can also be counterproductive. So this is why we're validating him. Because again, if you judge them too much, it's going to amplify them. It's going to make them a little harder, more intense. But suppressing them, they're going to blow up on you later, and it's going to cause more issues in your life too. And then detach from the need to feel motivated. Accept that you don't need to feel like doing something to actually do it. You don't. People do it every day. Separate your identity, a person with goals, from your temporary emotional state, which is a person who feels unmotivated today in that moment. We just got to show ourselves we got to do the work. And then we want to leverage behavioral activation. The action first principle is about understanding that action often precedes motivation. Engage in the target behavior for just a short, low-stakes period, like the 5-minute rule. It's one of the tools we've talked about before. The 5-minute rule is set an alarm, set a timer for 5 minutes, and once you start it, you just have to do whatever that thing is for 5 minutes and just see how it goes. You're getting that momentum started. Once you do that 5 minutes of work, maybe 10 minutes sounds easy. Maybe you want to do it for an hour. You just got to kickstart that engine, get it going, and see where it leads you. This can kickstart momentum and can generate the motivation you were waiting for to get started or to get going. You're leveraging the behavior. You can also lower the barrier to entry. Make starting your task incredibly easy. If your goal is to exercise, just put on your workout clothes. It's a lot easier just to do it if you're already ready to go. It takes less energy to actually get started. If you need to write, just open the laptop to a blank document. Again, you can just start writing. If you reduce the initial friction to action, it can make that action almost inevitable, where it's just naturally going to happen. And it's not about how good it goes. It's not about it, when I sit down to write that I wrote this perfect book. It's just that I started writing because I got the momentum going. And yes, maybe the first 10 pages suck, but maybe the next 10 after that are really amazing. So you have to get going, get that system running, and you're going to get more good things out of it than you're going to get bad things. You just got to give it time, and you got to stay consistent. And then you want to rely on systems, not willpower. With that, you want to use habits and routines. Your system should operate independently of your emotional state. If you have a morning routine of checking emails at 8 a.m., you do it at 8 a.m. regardless of how you feel. You're not just waiting to feel like checking your emails, you just do it because it's 8 a.m. That's where discipline comes in. You're building it into the system. There's also external accountability. We can use external structures to bypass internal emotions. This can involve setting deadlines, using a co-working space, or checking in with a mentor or a partner. The accountability acts as an external force for action, pushing us to get going because of the fear of the social judgment for not doing what we said we're going to do. And environment design. Modify your surroundings to make the desired behavior easier and the undesired behavior harder. For example, lay out your work items the night before to make sure the start of the day is easier, or move distraction out of sight. Or even if you're starting a new diet, make sure there's no unhealthy food in the house. It's going to make it harder to get to it if you had to actually go to the store to buy it. If it is all right there, the unhealthy food, and you're trying to start this diet, it's going to be a lot easier to get into the unhealthy food. So we can set up our environment to kind of support what we're trying to get done, as long as we know what we're trying to get done. And then finally, we want to reconnect with your why. It is really hard to work on things if we don't have a connection to the why. So review your purpose. On low days, gently remind yourself of the long-term vision or core values that drive your goals. This provides a sense of quiet purpose that can override a temporary lack of enthusiasm. And then focus on the process, not the outcome. Shift your satisfaction from the end result, which is often delayed, to the act of showing up and adhering to your values, which you can control daily. Control what you can control. Don't get focused on all the things outside of our control. Trust me, it just creates anxiety. I work with a lot of people who do that. We're going to touch on a little thing we talked about in that procrastination episode, which is episode 34. So again, go check that out if you want to. Mindfulness helps interrupt procrastination by creating a crucial pause between the urge to avoid a task and the habitual act of distraction. This awareness allows individuals to recognize the negative emotions driving procrastination and choose a different response. The active way of doing this is called observe, don't obey. So we observe what we're feeling, we observe what's going on, we don't necessarily listen into it. So if my emotion is saying I'm feeling really unmotivated and anxious and I don't want to do this thing, well, I can feel that, I can hear that, I can understand that, but it does not mean I'm going to listen to that and act on those things now. I can act on other things instead. So dive back into that episode if you want more of that, but using mindfulness to overcome procrastination can be very powerful. We also have identity-based habits, because identity is a huge impact, or a huge piece that gets impacted when we are high performers, because often our identity is kind of woven into what we do. Identity-based habits are a powerful framework for behavior change that focuses on transforming who you are rather than what you want. The core idea is that true behavior change is identity change. Most people approach change with an outcome-based mindset, such as I want to lose 20 pounds. This focuses on the external goal. An identity-based approach shifts the focus to I want to become a healthy person, which is a completely different focus. You start acting in ways to be healthy, where if you're trying to lose 20 pounds, you'll just do things to try and lose 20 pounds and then you're done. The healthy person, you can do that for the rest of your life. When habits are tied to identity, you are no longer relying on willpower to achieve a result. You're simply acting in alignment with how you already see yourself. The behavior becomes automatic because it is consistent with your self-image. Such as for high performers, one that many of you have probably experienced before, is that high performers tend to work extra hours. That's just what we do, because we're trying to push and get things done. We're not just trying to clock in and clock out and go home and hang out. We're trying to build things. We're trying to create things. We're trying to go after things. And with that, naturally, it just comes along with extra hours because you're doing more things. You're not just clocking in and leaving and just having fun and enjoying comfort outside of that. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're enjoying. It's just showing that this is a piece that comes with high performance, so we have to make room for it. When habits are tied to identity, you are no longer relying on willpower to achieve a result. You are simply acting in alignment with how you already see yourself. The behavior becomes automatic because it is consistent with your self-image, so it's easy for it just to build in and start doing it. And there's a two-step process for building an identity-based habit that we're going to jump into. The identity-based habit is focused on building a feedback loop involving action and belief. So first, you want to decide the type of person you want to be. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, define the identity you wish to embody. Instead of I want to finish a marathon, think I want to be a runner. Instead of I want to write a book, think I want to be a writer. Instead of saying I want to make $1 million a year, say I want to be a high achiever. Whenever you've decided on what type of person you want to be, you want to prove it to yourself with small wins. That's the second step. Your identity is built on evidence, not just belief. Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become. So once you believe the type of person you want to be, once you get that set up, now we have to back it up with evidence every day if we can. High achievers put out work every day. So I'm going to put out work every day, right? That's how we put a vote in towards that identity you want to be. If you want to be a runner, well, then you run every day. You're putting a vote in every day that is who I am. I am a runner, so I'm someone who runs. If you're a person who wants to be a writer, you write every day. The whole idea of this is you just do the thing consistently over time, and it starts to just be who you are. This behavior doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It just needs to be consistent. Each small win reinforces the new identity. You are literally casting votes for your new self with every action. So you want to make sure to cast enough votes, otherwise the other version of you might win out. This approach is superior because of how effective it is with sustainability and consistency. When a habit aligns with your self-image, there's little internal friction. It's just easy. You don't have to force yourself. It's just who you are. This makes the habit far more sustainable than those driven by willpower or short-term outcomes. This is something I've seen a lot with my exercise or working out. I've talked about it before, but working out or exercising is one of my favorite self-care activities for myself. It's something that I enjoy a lot. It's very easy for me to get into it. It is not very easy for a lot of other people to exercise, and I understand that, and I see that every day. The reason it's easy for me is I've consistently worked out since about 7th grade. So it's very easy for me to get into that habit and just do it because it's part of just who I am. It's part of my identity. So when I don't work out, even though my body feels okay, it doesn't feel bad or anything, it just feels wrong because I'm acting against my values, against who I am as a person. So that's how we tie it back to the identity and how it helps push us forward, because you naturally feel kind of wrong if you're not acting in alignment with it. Now we're going to change topics a little bit, but I think it's a huge, important one that we need to cover, which is why high performers secretly doubt themselves. High performers often secretly doubt themselves due to a psychological phenomenon known as imposter syndrome, the spotlight effect, and the pressure of maintaining a high bar that they have set for themselves. So with imposter syndrome, we talked about that in a past episode, so go check that out in the catalog if you want to learn more about it or if you struggle with it yourself. But we're going to talk about that a little bit and these other two very quickly too. So imposter syndrome, this is perhaps the most common reason it happens the most, which is again why we put an episode out on it. High performers often struggle with pervasive fear that they are frauds and don't deserve their success. They attribute their achievements to luck, timing, or deceiving others rather than their own skills. And they fear being found out as incompetent despite clear evidence of their expertise. Has that ever happened to you guys, where you just have been successful or something's working out well, or you get a promotion, but then you secretly have those thoughts of one day they're going to figure out I shouldn't be in this role, or that I'm not actually good enough at this, or what if I mess it all up, right? That fear is going to creep in. That's normal, and that happens a lot, and there are ways to beat it. Don't get lost feeling these things. Let's beat these things and conquer them together. If you're struggling with it and you're not sure how to get past it, and if that other episode on the imposter syndrome isn't helpful, reach out to us here at Premier Performance, and we would love to help you guys get past it and get through it together. The next one is the spotlight effect. Successful individuals often feel they're constantly under scrutiny, believing their mistakes and flaws are highly visible to everyone. This exaggerated sense of being watched amplifies self-doubt and the pressure to be perfect. So it feels like we're being watched. It feels like there's an eye on us all the time. And because of that, we keep trying to put out high levels of productivity, whatever we're doing. And that can lead to burnout. That can break us down. We have to be able to turn it off sometimes. And then the last one, the moving goalpost phenomenon. High performers often set extremely high standards for themselves. Once a goal is achieved, they immediately raise the bar for the next thing. There's no moment of pause to celebrate. They're constantly striving for the next more difficult achievement. This creates a perpetual state of not being good enough. This is something I've seen a lot in my work with Premier Performance, and I recently was working with a football team where I saw this show up almost every game. That there was athletes on the team that were very talented, doing really great things, but would beat themselves up for little mistakes that would happen and just kind of brush off things that would go well. Like they'd make an amazing play and they'd be like, whatever, time to move on to the next one, which is good for when we make a mistake, not so much when we're winning. We want to celebrate the wins, show ourselves that we're doing good things, because that's going to help us keep going. That's going to help us keep building the momentum, and it's going to help us build into the identity of who we are and what we can achieve. And then there's also a fear of failure at a high level. The higher you climb, the greater the stakes become. A minor setback that a beginner would easily brush off can feel like a catastrophic failure to an elite performer because of the expectations placed upon them by themselves and others. And this all leads to a low self-belief, which kills initiative. Low self-belief kills initiative by creating a cycle of fear, paralysis, and avoidance. When individuals doubt their capabilities, they stop attempting new challenges, thus preventing the accumulation of evidence that could build their self-belief. The primary consequence of low self-belief is a heightened fear of failure. People with low self-belief often view failure as a reflection of their inherent worth of competence, such as I am a failure, rather than a temporary setback like the attempt failed. This fear paralyzes them from taking the initiative in the first place to avoid potential humiliation or judgment. And this is another topic we've talked about before. We did a whole episode on failure and handling setbacks and how to deal with those things because they come up so often in the work that we do. And we have to be able to untie that identity from that failure and understand that the attempt or the situation or the thing just didn't work out, not so much that we ourselves are the failure. There's also the why bother mentality, which is a little bit more of learned helplessness. If a person believes they lack the skills or the ability to succeed, they adopt a why bother attitude. They assume their efforts will be futile regardless of how hard they try. This mindset leads to a state of learned helplessness where individuals stop attempting control over their environment or achieving goals because past perceived failures have convinced them they are incapable. And this is what happens with the dopamine system we talked about. That if you feel like the effort put in is not going to lead to the reward, you get to this why bother mindset. Like, why even do this thing? It's not worth it. So we have to learn to move through this and not take on that helplessness side of it and actually get working, get fighting. Because sometimes we talk ourselves out of it and believe the situation is just stuck forever when there are ways forward if we're willing to keep moving and show ourselves that there is an option here. Taking initiative often involves stepping outside of a comfort zone, trying new things, and facing an uncertainty. Low self-belief makes these risks feel overwhelming. People with low self-belief are more likely to stay in situations where they feel safe and comfortable, avoiding opportunities for growth and new experiences. This is how you can get stuck in a spot for 20 or even 30 years. Even if it's a great spot, you may be missing out on opportunities to grow in ways you never thought possible because you're choosing control and safety and comfort. Sometimes we got to take the leap of faith and push towards the unknown, embrace the fear, and see where it leads us. And this is also our goal here with the Premier Mindset, is hoping that you guys get the courage to go out there and pursue what you've always wanted. Because the life you want to live is out there for you. You just have to be willing to dare greatly to achieve it. And not many people are. That's why we want to push you guys to do this work. And if you're not even sure how to, that's why we want to help. We build confidence through follow through. This is going to help us with that low self-belief system. We have the feedback loop of confidence, which helps. And it works in a simple yet powerful loop. First, we make a commitment. You make a promise to yourself, like I will exercise for 20 minutes today, or I'll start that project report. And then we follow through with the action. You execute the task as promised, regardless of your emotional state, and this builds discipline. It shows you can do it. And that further gives you evidence and proof. You have now created tangible proof of your capability and reliability. I said I would do it, and I did, which further builds you up, gives you that motivation that I can keep going because it increases your self-belief and confidence. The evidence reinforces a new belief system of I am a person who can rely on myself. So it's easier to hold myself accountable. It's easier to do the thing. And that's why follow through builds lasting confidence. At the end of the day, action is over emotion. It shifts the focus from waiting for inspiration or feeling confident, which is unreliable, to simply taking action, which is controllable and more about discipline. This bypasses the myth that the right mindset must precede action, because we can just start. We can just build up that momentum and keep using it as we move forward. And then it gives us tangible proof. Abstract positive thinking can only go so far. Imagining that everything can go well and believing in yourself and saying you're awesome is great, but it only goes so far. Following through provides concrete data points that your brain uses to update your self-image. It moves self-belief from an idea to a fact, and it makes it a whole lot easier to take it on as an identity of this is just who I am. Now let's talk about two different kinds of identities that get in the way of each other, and we want to choose one over the other. One side we have competing, the other side we have completing. Competing identity describes a state where an individual's core sense of self is linked to external metrics of superiority and victory over others, while completing identity is a mindset centered on intrinsic growth, fulfillment, and actualizing one's potential regardless of external comparison. So competing is focused on external, it's focused on people around us, things outside of us, where completing is more focused on ourself and just being better than we were yesterday. The competing identity is kind of the external scorecard. The competing identity is primarily focused on a zero-sum game. For one person to win, another must lose. We can't both win. It's a competition. There's only enough wins out there for one of us. And it focuses on external validation because of that. Self-worth is derived from comparison, titles, rewards, and being perceived as better than others. Success is judged by where you rank on a leaderboard. Enoughness is literally never reached. Because there's always someone else to compete with or surpass, the internal baseline for enough constantly moves. This fuels a perpetual state of striving, often leading to burnout or success fatigue. On top of that, motivation is usually followed through a fear of losing. The primary driver is often the fear of being beaten, marginalized, or falling behind. This fear-based motivation is stressful and unsustainable long-term, and it leads to a fragile self-belief. When self-worth is tied to external outcomes, setbacks or failures can be catastrophic to one's own self-image, as they signal a loss in that competition. While on the other side, the completing identity is more of an internal scorecard. The completing identity is focused on mastery and self-actualization. The competition is internal, striving to be the best version of oneself. So it focuses on internal growth. Success is measured by personal growth, learning, skill mastery, and living in alignment with core values. The individual is on their own unique journey. And with that, enoughness is assumed. There's an underlying assumption of inherent worth. The drive comes from a desire for mastery and contribution, not a need to prove value. So you're not constantly trying to prove that you're good enough. You're just good enough as you are, and you're just happening to do things too. And there's intrinsic motivation in that. The primary driver is a genuine interest in the process, the work itself, and the desire to reach one's own full potential. This type of motivation is resilient and sustainable and a lot more effective in the long run. And it follows up with a resilient self-belief. This is because setbacks are viewed as learning opportunities and necessary parts of the growth process. They don't threaten the core identity of a person committed to completing their potential. But at the same time, external pressure does work. It just doesn't work long term. External pressure works effectively as a short-term motivator because it triggers immediate responses like fear of punishment or desire for reward. But it fails in the long run because it undermines intrinsic motivation, leads to burnout, and fosters a lack of self-trust. External pressures such as deadlines, social expectations, surveillance, or the promise of a bonus is effective for quick results because it activates immediate survival and reward mechanisms in the brain. Pressure creates a sense of urgency. The fear of negative consequences like getting fired, failing a class, or being judged is a powerful immediate driver of action. External mandates provide clear, non-negotiable goals and boundaries, which also reduces decision fatigue and the cognitive load of deciding what to do. You just follow what you're told. For someone stuck in inertia, a push from the outside can be exactly what is needed to overcome the initial resistance and get started, get that snowball rolling, and it can start growing and continuing down that hill as it goes. But long term, it doesn't work. The effectiveness of external pressure is short-lived for several critical reasons. The first one being that it undermines intrinsic motivation. The over-justification effect suggests that when an intrinsically interesting activity is tied to external pressure or rewards, the individual's internal drive to do the activity for its own sake diminishes. The activity changes from something enjoyable to something that must be done, and it starts to feel like a chore. This leads to burnout and resentment. Constant pressure keeps the body in a state of high alert. That sympathetic nervous system is activated. This chronic stress is physically and mentally exhausting, leading to an emotional exhaustion, resentment toward the source of pressure, and eventual burnout, which means you just can't keep doing the thing you're doing. And it destroys autonomy. A fundamental human need is the need for autonomy, feeling in control of one's own life and choices. External pressure erodes this feeling, turning individuals into passive recipients of demands rather than active participants in their goals. This lack of ownership reduces long-term commitment, and the focus shifts from mastery to compliance. The goal under pressure is no longer personal growth or mastery. It is simply to satisfy the external demand and get the pressure off. This leads to minimal effort required to check the box rather than the pursuit of excellence. And this is why we talk about this, because we're here to pursue excellence, not just get by. And then behavior ceases when the pressure is removed. The key failure of external pressure is that motivation is external. When the boss leaves, when the deadline passes, or the surveillance is gone, the behavior stops because the individual never internalized the reason for the action. They were doing it because they were afraid of the punishment or they wanted the reward. But once that's gone, they're not motivated to do it now because they were doing it for the external reasons. And while external rewards can be tough, we can break the addiction to them. Extrinsic motivators like money, praise, or titles to intrinsic satisfaction, mastery of the process, and identity-based habits is what we need to do to break that addiction. This transition builds a more resilient, sustainable form of motivation. First, we got to shift the focus from outcome to process. The addiction to external rewards is often an addiction to the win or the prize. By focusing on the process and the daily execution of tasks, you derive satisfaction from the effort itself. This is actually something I was working with a client with the other day. They were struggling with trying to train somebody and they're having a hard time training them. And we talked about the fact that they were being so caught up with the outcome of that they just didn't reach the outcome they wanted, that the person was trained in a successful way, that they were getting frustrated instead of just focusing on the process of doing what you need to do. So we got to focus on the process. We got to focus on doing the things, not on what we hope it ends up being. Because if you try and focus on the outcome, we don't have control over that, and that may never show up. But you can control the process. So celebrate small daily wins. Find satisfaction in showing up and putting in the work, not just in the final result. Adhering to your discipline is the win of the day. You got to give yourself credit for hitting it. And embrace the tedium of mastery. Acknowledge that the path to success involves a lot of routine, unglamorous work. There's a lot of work happening when the lights aren't on and people don't see it. The reward becomes the act of mastering your craft, which is a deeply intrinsic motivator. And after those things, you want to cultivate intrinsic motivation and autonomy. So reconnect with your innate desires for competence, autonomy, and relatedness by reclaiming your why. Go back to the core reason you started in the first place, before external rewards even entered the picture. What value does the work itself provide you? What is it doing for you? And embrace choice and control. Reframe mandatory tasks as choices you are making to align with your values. This restores your sense of autonomy and reduces the feelings of external pressure. No one likes being forced or feeling trapped. So even if that is a situation we're in, if we can reframe how we're looking at it, it's going to feel better. And then build identity-based habits. Instead of performing actions for an external reward, perform actions because they align with the type of person you want to be. You do it not because of what you're going to get, but just because this is who you are. And then however the situation goes, you're not going to feel bad about it because you're acting for who you are instead of trying to get something out of it. So we want to define your desired identity. Focus on becoming a healthy person or a consistent writer rather than achieving an outcome like losing weight or publishing a book, like we talked about a little bit earlier. And then vote for your new self daily. Each action you take is a vote for that identity. Whether you're voting for the new identity or the old identity is up to you. The satisfaction comes from building evidence for who you are, not from an external validation. Create an internal scorecard. Move away from external metrics like salary, job titles, social media likes to an internal assessment of your progress. Focus on integrity and follow through. Build confidence through follow through. The most important reward is the self-trust you gain from doing what you said you would do, regardless of the external outcome. Minimize reliance on external validation. Seek feedback from a trusted inner circle rather than the general public or corporate metrics, which often focus heavily on performance outcomes rather than effort and integrity. By focusing on these internal drivers, you weaken the grip of external rewards and build a more reliable, resilient form of motivation that sustains high performance long after the external pressure or rewards have ceased to work. Internal drivers create long-term momentum by providing a sustainable, resilient, and self-reinforcing source of motivation that external rewards cannot match. When individuals are driven by intrinsic factors like purpose, autonomy, and mastery, their motivation becomes an internal engine that fuels consistent progress through natural challenges and setbacks. But at the same time, we all have natural motivation dips. Natural motivation dips are a normal and inevitable part of the human experience. It's not a sign of personal failure or a lack of willpower. This is something that every one of us is just going to go through. Motivation is an emotion that is designed to fluctuate, driven by biological rhythms, psychological needs, and environmental factors. So let's talk a little bit about why these dips occur. First one being circadian rhythms. The body has a natural internal clock that causes energy and alertness to ebb and flow throughout the day. A classic example is the midday slump after lunch, which is a common physiological dip in energy. And we're actually doing an episode, and I think 2 episodes from now, that is going to be focused on circadian rhythms and some other internal cycles to be aware of and systems to be aware of. So we're going to get deeper in that if you're interested. The next one is dopamine adaptation. As the brain's reward system adapts to routine, the initial high of novelty fades. The strong dopamine response experienced at the beginning of a project naturally wanes as the task becomes predictable, leading to a period of lower enthusiasm as that dopamine reduces. And then energy and resource depletion. Sustained effort consumes significant mental and physical energy. A lack of sleep, poor nutrition, or chronic stress and burnout drains these resources, causing the brain to reduce motivational drive as a protective mechanism. And this is why our second episode covers self-care and taking care of ourselves so we can operate at these high levels. Because if you don't take care of you, there's no way you're getting there. And then psychological overwhelm. When faced with a complex task or many responsibilities, the brain may trigger a motivational dip as a way to shut down and cope with feeling overwhelmed. The dip in the learning process. Low motivation is a natural part of the learning and growth process, often occurring when individuals encounter obstacles or the unexciting slog period after the initial excitement of a new venture has worn off. It is easy to be excited at the beginning. Everyone is. But after that initial excitement wears off, that's where the difference is made. Are you able to continue consistently doing that work during that slog period where it's frustrating, it's not fun, it's not enjoyable, and it feels like you're banging your head on the wall? We actually need that part to learn new things, as that frustration signals to our brain to start the neuroplasticity process to build new pathways so we can learn how to do new things and grow as an individual. So rather than fighting these dips, high performers manage them through discipline and systems, because they're just a thing that's going to show up. We don't need to be mad at them. We don't need to resist them. We just need to work with them. So we got to acknowledge the normality. Recognize that the dip is temporary and a normal part of the cycle, and it happens to everybody, no matter who you are. And rely on discipline and habits. Use structured routines and commitment to act even when inspiration is absent. Discipline ensures consistency where motivation fails. And focus on small, manageable steps. We can do anything if we break it down small enough. Break overwhelming tasks into smaller actions to build momentum and achieve small wins. This can help restore our motivation. And then prioritize fundamental needs, like we talked about with self-care, the ensuring adequate sleep, nutrition, and rest. Addressing those basic physiological needs is crucial for supporting motivation levels and making sure we're primed to perform at these optimal levels. And then reconnect with purpose. Periodically revisit the core why behind your goals. Relinking daily tasks to the bigger picture can reignite a sense of meaning and purpose. And finally, seek support. Talk to a coach, a mentor, or a friend. Having a support system provides accountability and a fresh perspective during challenging times. And this is exactly the work we take on here at Premier Performance. We're helping build you guys up to do the things you want to do and support you on your path towards that journey. So reach out to us if you don't feel like you have people to lean on, or you're not even sure where to get started, or there's a part that you're getting stuck on and you're not sure how to get past it. We have tools to help you get past it and reach that success you've always wanted. Don't be afraid of your dreams. You can have them. We just got to be willing to go after them. The pursuit is the hardest part. Now, a couple questions before we get out of here. I want you guys again to reflect on these questions, send them my way so I can track your guys' progress, see how you're doing, and get involved and help out best I can too. And it also holds the accountability to you guys, kind of that external factor like we were talking about, to keep that motivation going and keep that reflection moving. So first question, am I acting based on discipline or waiting for motivation to strike? Honestly ask yourself, are you holding yourself accountable to what you said you're going to do or what you want to do? Are you waiting for that fleeting emotion of motivation to show up? Am I following through on the small promises I make myself? Are you guys holding to your word? Are you saying you're going to do things and not doing it? Are you a person that says they're going to do something and then they go do it? It matters in terms of what we say and what we agree to, what we commit to, and our ability to follow through on that. And your identity is listening to everything you say. And then the last question, am I working to beat others or to grow and complete my own potential? Are you doing this to build up yourself? Or are you doing this to compete with others, trying to be the best version of whoever you can be versus everyone else and what they got going on out there? One version of this is going to build you up. The other version is going to break you down. I'm pretty sure you guys can figure out which is which. So give it some thought, answer those questions, reflect on it honestly, and send me your answers so I can keep working with you guys, hold you accountable. The people I have talked with so far, it's been great to hear what you guys are doing and where you're at, and I want to keep staying connected with you all. Resilient minds, premier results. We're building ourselves up here with the right mindset to reach those premier results we want. And the way to do that is through education and awareness and building up that recognition to see what is happening, because recognition is the first step. So if this is helpful for you, that's great. That's our goal. And please leave us a review. The reviews help us get this in front of more people, and that's our ultimate goal, is just to spread the awareness as far as we can get it. And if there is someone in your life that you think could benefit from hearing from these things, share this episode with them directly as well. You never know when you're going to start somebody on a new path in their life. So if there's somebody that's sticking out in your mind right now, just send them the episode. It takes 5 seconds, and you don't even have to follow through and see if they listen to it. Just send it their way and see what they do with it. It might change their life. And that's not just this podcast. This is any education, any awareness that you come into that you think is going to help somebody. Just send it their way. I make it a point to give you actionable tools to find success in your life. I truly want to help you guys live an easier life. That's our goal. Let me know if it's helping. I love staying connected with you all. I want to hear about all of it. I want to hear about the successes, the failures, the disappointments, anything in between. And I want to be here as a resource to help support you guys through it all too. So reach out, let me know what's going on, connect with me. Even if you're just dropping by real quick to let me know about something, I'd love that. And you can reach out in a lot of different ways. The first one is through email, which is tmailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name spelled Mahler. You could text or call me directly at 775-561-0056. We have the Instagram and the TikTok with the same name for both of those. We're building those communities up, and we're dropping content every day, which is Premier_Performance_Reno for both of those. We have the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page with the same name on both of those as well, which is Premier Performance LLC. And then the Twitter or X account, which is @Premier Reno LLC. And finally, our website, which is www.premierperformancereno.com. So we have a bunch of resources for you guys to take advantage of right there on that website, along with the services that we offer, so you can check those out, see what we got going, and see if there's something helpful for you as you continue on your path to growing and being greater. We have new episodes coming out every week, coming out every Sunday morning. We have daily content dropping on all our social media sites, with all those social media sites also linked in our show notes at the bottom. So go check that out and get involved in those communities. Next week, we're going to talk about individual, couple, and family therapy, what those three are, what they look like, how to use them, and kind of going through some myths and some misunderstanding of what they are and how they can be used, and building yourself up through performance with those things to get things out of your way. So we're going to really explore that a little bit and help you guys figure out how to best use that for your own situation to optimize that performance. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you guys enjoy yourselves. Push for those dreams that you have. Don't be afraid of the fear. Don't be afraid of failing. Just go towards what you want and keep working at it consistently. You'd be surprised at how many things we can get if we just went after them and we didn't stop until we got it. So do what you can. If you need help, reach out. I'd love to be here to help you guys and be a resource however I can. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great time, and I will see you next week as we keep going with all this. So we'll talk soon.